Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be looking at a unique item which has undergone a lot of changes and is definitely a lot better now than it was in previous seasons, and that is the Azurewrath. The Azurewrath went from an item that only worked with core skills to an item that was only equipable by like a couple characters to now it's an item that is equipable by everybody and it works on more than just core skills. It definitely seems like it's a hell of a lot more interesting than it was in previous seasons. The Azurewrath blade has an implicit, which is 85% cold damage. This is just a passive effect that can't be affected by masterworking or tempering or anything. And it's just there, just an 85% cold damage bonus, which is not terrible. It also gives 47 to 65 all stats, which is, of course, because it is available to all classes at this point. I think the only class that can't use this at this point is the Spiritborn, which isn't even in the game yet. But because they said the Spiritborn was going to be glaives and spears only. On top of this, the all stats bonus gives you a lot of additional effects. Strength gives you armor, intelligence gets you resistances, willpower gives you like overpower damage, dexterity gives you dodge chance, and there's crit in there and everything too. Depending on what character you are, crit might be in a different place, but for the most part, like having an all stats bonus is going to give you a lot of additional damage. I'm sorry, Mr. Nimoy has demanded a chip. There you go. I can read him. I know how to read my little rodent. My little chinchilla friend. I love you, little buddy. He says, leave me alone, so let me my chip. Well, thanks. On top of the all stats, you also get attack speed bonus. And you can see this is a greater affix. It's 13.5%. It's actually not a lot, considering that some of the other items in the game have a lot more attack speed. But this is not attack speed specifically for basic skills or something like that. This is a generic attack speed that applies to everything. So it's a little bit more powerful than like something like Condemnation, which has like a 25% bonus to basic skill attack speed. You know, it's not terrible. On top of this, it also has cold resistance, which resistances has really not even been an issue ever since Season 5. I feel like most people have had no issues with resistances at all, especially once you get your hands on like a Tyrael's that has like 102% resistances on it. It's kind of crazy. But it's there. It also has up to a 40% chance to deal 6,500 cold damage to the target, which can get a greater affix as well and enhance that. It's also enhanced, obviously, by the cold damage passive that it has, which is going to bring that even higher. On top of this, it also has a lucky hit of up to a 20% chance to freeze enemies for 3 seconds, and also dish out 24,060 cold damage to them when you hit them. Of course, he left the crumbs on my shirt. You're a crummy little crummo. Why don't you come back here and finish your chip?
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
You're just going to leave the chip there. There's crumbs everywhere. Crummy crumbs. I'm going to leave the chip there because he might come back and he might be hungry. So, honestly, this item is actually pretty powerful now in terms of freezing and dishing out cold damage. And if you're scaling cold damage, it could be an interesting addition to your build. The ancient rune blade of Angel Iswal Azurewrath was miraculously spared the corruption that consumed its master. This is also, there's a little bit of a story behind Azurewrath, because Azurewrath also exists in Diablo 2, and Iswal was the angel that wielded it. Iswal lost it by going to hell and trying to stop the forging of a demon blade that was being forged at the time at the Hellforge, and he failed horribly. The demon blade that was being forged at the Hellforge wasn't even very good. I think that was like Shadowfang or something, which is a terrible sword. And it's all very, very funny when you think about it like that he literally risked his life to stop the forging of a sword that wasn't even like an equal sword to his. whatever. Um, this sword, though, does have some pretty interesting effects, like being able to freeze targets. And I'm currently using Frosty, so I'm going to take these off before, dramatic effect. And as you can see, I'm getting a nice little freezing effect on the targets whenever I strike them. It's going to be pretty much all the time. As you can see, pretty much everything is frozen for the most part. And utilizing this freezing effect, you can definitely get some interesting bonuses. First off, freezes are very good for staggering bosses. So if you do have a boss that you're trying to stagger, being able to freeze them repeatedly is going to give you a very nice stagger bonus. If you check out my video on stagger testing, just type in Diablo 4 stagger testing, I'm sure it'll pop up. We did a lot of testing on various effects, and freezes were far more effective at staggering bosses than like chills, for instance. And by a factor of like, I think it was like 100 or something. It was crazy. Minor crowd control effects don't really apply much stagger, but something like a hard crowd control effect, like a freeze, applies a lot of stagger and very quickly. And so this particular type of item can definitely enhance the damage or the stagger potential of something that you're trying to do. And obviously you can also scale the cold damage. Frosties scale cold damage as well now, so you could stack the Frosties together with Azurewrath, getting like an insanely large number of freezing attempts and also cold damage of the process. And it also has a lucky chance hit for cold. You got a lucky chance hit for cold here, additional cold damage there, and by the time you're done, you've got so many different cold effects going on, and the monsters are basically just permanently frozen all the time. And you can see they're very nice and frosty here. This is definitely an interesting way to build a character, just having like a tremendously large amount of frost effects. There's so many freezes going on that like the monsters don't even have a chance to do anything. Like if you were running this build, it would definitely be a build where the monsters would, for the most part, just simply be frozen like 90% of the time. There's only going to be a small time period between, like, because when you freeze a monster or when you apply a hard crowd control to a monster, they do gain the unstoppable effect after that crowd control ends. And you could, of course, obviously refreeze them after their unstoppable effect ends. You could also potentially combine this together with something like the Cowl of the Nameless, which is a rather interesting option because it also has a pretty huge duration bonus for crowd controls, 55% increased crowd control duration. And graphics that. Get your freezes to last even longer so that the monsters just stand there in a stupor while you kill them, which could be rather fun. Obviously, if you're a cold damage character, like a cold imbue rogue, if you are a cold sorceress, and various other things, you can definitely get some interesting bonuses to your cold damage this way, scaling up some of your cold modifiers, enhancing, obviously, your spells as well, because your spells also count as cold damage, like if you're using Blizzard or Frozen Orb or various other things like that. Of course, if you're already a cold sorceress, you might not necessarily need access to an additional freeze, but hear me out. Chilling is not the same as freezing. I know that chills build up to a freeze on regular monsters, but when you're chilling a boss, you get basically no stagger bonus. When you're freezing a boss, you get a massive amount of stagger bonus. So even for something like a sorceress, the Azurewrath's additional freezing options can actually help out tremendously to stagger bosses faster because you're applying a direct freeze to them as opposed to a chill to them, which is interesting. I had to pick him up because I'm pretty sure he was about to tinkle on me. Tinkle butt. No tinkle tinkles. No tinkles. Sometimes he's bad. If you're trying to pick up an Azurewrath, this one does drop from Duriel and Endariel, but if you're ever interested in trying to figure out where these items fall from, you can take a look at Diablo 4.life with the target farming tool. And in the target farming tool on any character, because pretty much every character can use Azurewrath now, you just click on Azurewrath and it's going to show you that it's Duriel, Maggot King, and Endariel, Maiden of Anguish. Just if you're trying to find like one with greater affixes on it, I would want greater affixes on the attack speed, the all stats, and the chance to deal cold damage. I don't really care much about that cold resistance. And obviously I would want the higher damage output on the freeze enemies for 3 seconds, because if I'm going for the cold damage, I might as well stack it to the moon. And it could be fun to set up like an all cold damage character like this. There's actually a really interesting kind of like elemental barbarian that you could set up with this. Probably use like Frosties, Azurewrath, maybe like throw in Hellhammer because it's fire, and Frosties also beef up fire as well. And then then you're freezing and burning everything. I've always wanted to set up a really fun Azurewrath build, and it might be something that I'm eventually gonna do. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these fun videos, even when we're just talking about Azurewrath, one of the old uniques from Diablo 2 that's made it into Diablo 4. And as always, keep watching.